Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise and get straight to the heart of what you need to know. Today, we're plunging into a case that has absolutely captivated the nation, the Karen Read trial. It's been, well, more than just a legal battle. For many, it's become a powerful and sometimes unsettling masterclass in how our justice system truly operates, revealing its strengths and, critically, its vulnerabilities.
Exactly. Our mission with this deep dive is to unpack the complex layers of this trial. We want to pull out the most important insights regarding, legal defense strategies, prosecutorial conduct, and maybe most importantly, this critical issue of police accountability.
Right. The goal here is to give you a comprehensive shortcut, really, to understanding a case that offers crucial lessons, sometimes uncomfortable lessons, for anyone interested in how the justice system functions, and, as we'll definitely see, how it can sometimes spectacularly falter.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Karen Read. She was accused in the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, back on January 29th, 2022.
And the prosecution's initial claims seemed, well, pretty stark. They said Read, after a night of drinking, hit O'Keefe with her SUV and just left him to die in the snow. That was their story from day one.
But the defense, right from the get-go, came back with a completely different theory, an explosive one, really. They argued O'Keefe was fatally injured during a fight inside a house party, not by a car, and that Karen Read was actually wrongly accused, maybe even framed.
A setup. Wow. And that fundamental disagreement, that clash of narratives that really set the stage for what became an extraordinarily long, contentious trial. So prolonged.
Yeah, and prolonged is the word. Criminal trials can take time, sure, but the Karen Read trial faced what sources kept calling unusual delays, which is part of why it grabbed so much national attention, right? Kept everyone hooked.
Absolutely. So what were the factors that stretched this out so much? Why did it take so long?
Well, a big factor, and honestly a key defense strategy, was just the sheer volume of procedural battles. The defense team filed motion after motion, challenging almost every single aspect of the prosecution's case.
So each motion is like a mini-trial.
Pretty much. Each one needs hearings, legal arguments, judges have to rule on them. That process alone added months and months to the timeline. It wasn't just about delay, though. It was strategic. Force the prosecution to show their cards early, find the weaknesses.
Okay, so it wasn't just procedural challenges. The defense really started digging into the investigation itself, didn't they? Raising some pretty serious concerns about how police handled things. What were the big issues they brought up?
Oh, they hit hard on that. They alleged everything from improper evidence collection right there at the scene to potential bias from investigators because of personal connections, which we'll definitely get into. Then there were claims of missing or destroyed evidence, always a huge red flag, and even questionable witness statements that seemed to, change over time.
And all these concerns led to more hearings before the main trial even started.
Exactly. Multiple pre-trial hearings, often focused just on whether certain evidence could even be used. It was in these early stages that the defense really laid the foundation for their whole argument. This investigation was fundamentally flawed.
It sounded like they were relentless. I remember they even filed a motion to dismiss the whole case. That didn't work, but what was the effect of trying something that bold?
It was a very smart strategic play, even though it failed. It powerfully highlighted weaknesses in the prosecution's case right from the start. It basically put the state on notice. We're not just going along with this. We're fighting every single detail and arguing frame-up and cover-up so early. That definitely shaped public perception, maybe even how the prosecution proceeded.
Okay, let's really zoom in on that aggressive defense strategy, because for me, that's where this trial got fascinating. They weren't just poking holes. They were saying, she didn't do it, and here's what actually happened. How did they build that alternative story that O'Keefe was hurt at the party, not by the SUV?
They were incredibly specific. They aimed to just dismantle the prosecution's car theory piece by piece. They argued O'Keefe's injuries were inconsistent with being hit by a vehicle. Different patterns, they said. And, crucially, they pointed to a lack of expected damage to Read's SUV.
Right. Like, if she hit him hard enough to kill him, shouldn't the car show more damage?
That was exactly their point. Then they alleged missing surveillance footage from key spots that could have helped confirm or deny timelines. And maybe the most visual part, they attacked the blood evidence placement, pointing out police collected bloody snow in red Solo cups.
Solo cups, seriously.
Yes, and using a grocery bag to hold evidence. Anyone watching knows that just screams improper procedure. These details painted a picture of an investigation that was, let's say, sloppy at best, maybe compromised.
And then came the really troubling stuff, what the defense called serious police conduct problems.
Oh.
This seemed to go right to the heart of public trust. Like the lead investigator, Michael Proctor. The defense pointed out he had personal connections to people at the party.
Yes, exactly. Proctor knew Brian Albert's brother, Kevin, who was a Canton police officer. And Proctor's own sister, Courtney, apparently talked regularly with Julie Albert.
Wow. So how did the defense argue those connections actually compromised things, not just looked bad?
They argued it created a clear conflict of interest, a path for bias, and they claimed it led to real failures. Evidence not preserved properly, key witnesses not interviewed quickly or, thoroughly enough, and maybe most damaging. They claimed some officers' stories changed over time.
Inconsistencies.
Right. Those inconsistencies, plus the direct ties to people involved in the defense's version of events that fueled the frame-up and cover-up theories. It suggested maybe an intentional effort to point the finger away from the house party.
And then Proctor's text messages came out. I mean, those were genuinely shocking. Text to colleagues, supervisors, family, friends, saying he found no nudes so far on Reed's phone, wishing hopefully she kills herself.
Yeah.
And say, nope, homeowner is a Boston cop too, when asked about looking into the property owner.
Yeah, those texts were something else. The defense strategy was clearly to expose what they saw as a profoundly biased, unprofessional, maybe even malicious investigation. Proctor claimed the texts had absolutely zero impact on the case, but they cast this huge, dark shadow over everything the police did.
How could they not?
Exactly. They became powerful evidence straight from the lead investigator, supporting the defense claim of an unfair process. In court, that kind of thing can just destroy the credibility of the state's case. It suggests an investigator looking for a specific outcome, not the truth.
Beyond Proctor's conduct, there were other big issues with evidence handling too, right? I'm thinking about ATF agent Brian Higgins destroying his phone's SIM card in a dumpster.
Right, at a military base, no less.
Right.
Which conveniently made texts with key witnesses disappear. That's a huge allegation, evidence tampering.
And the timeline stuff, the Google search, post long to die in cold.
Oh, yeah, that was critical. The defense highlighted that search on Jennifer McCabe's phone. They argued it happened hours before O'Keefe was found, like 2:27 a.m., while the prosecution insisted it was after he was found, around 6:23 a.m., and that Reed asked her to do it.
Such a massive difference in time.
Huge. If the defense could convince the jury the search happened before the body was found, it suggests someone knew O'Keefe was in trouble much earlier and potentially points away from Reed. It suggests manipulation of the narrative.
And it didn't stop there. The video from the police station, Sallyport, the secure entry area, the defense found it was poor quality but also inverted, with altered evidence.
Yes, they called it extraordinary governmental misconduct, a bombshell. They argued it showed a deliberate attempt to hide or change evidence about O'Keefe's condition or how he was handled initially.
So you got destroyed phone data, weird evidence collection, questionable searches, potentially altered video.
It paints a picture, doesn't it? At best, incompetent investigation. At worst, a systematic effort to frame Reed and protect others. This kind of thing is exactly why public trust in the system gets shaken so badly.
And didn't a plow driver add another piece to this puzzle? Brian Loughran.
That was crucial testimony. Loughran testified he drove by the house on Fairview Road 4 times overnight, and he said he never saw a body.
4 times. That just blows a massive hole in the prosecution's idea that O'Keefe lay there for hours after Reed hit him.
Absolutely. If the body wasn't there when Loughran passed by, it completely messes up the state's timeline. It adds more weight to the defense theory that something else happened somewhere else or at a different time. It put the prosecution in a really tough spot.
Okay, so the first trial ends in a hung jury.
Yeah.
July 2024. A mistrial. Which means basically the slate is wiped clean, right? The prosecution can try again. That's like getting a do-over. What did both sides learn from that first run? How did they adapt for the second trial?
A mistrial is frustrating, sure, but it's also an incredible learning opportunity for both sides. The prosecution, now with Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan, really looked hard at what went wrong the first time. They streamlined their case, became more focused, called fewer witnesses.
Fewer witnesses, interesting.
Yeah, they zeroed in on specific physical evidence and Reed's own alleged statements they thought were the strongest. And very notably, they did not call Michael Proctor to testify in the second trial.
Avoiding those texts and the cross-examination.
Presumably, yes. It clearly backfired the first time. They didn't want to give the defense that ammunition again.
And the defense, they must have learned a lot too.
Oh, absolutely. They got unparalleled insight into the prosecution's whole case, their strategies, their weak spots. So they continued hammering their frame-up and cover-up theories, but with even sharper focus. They refined their cross-examinations, and instead of questioning Proctor directly...
Right. They did that brilliant move calling his childhood friend, Jonathan Diamandis, to read Proctor's own damning texts out loud.
Such a clever tactical move. It showed they understood the power of those texts and found a way to get them in front of the jury again, maybe even more impactfully. It just underscored their whole theme of misconduct. Both sides really refined their arguments for round 2.
So after all that, the second trial ends. June 18th, 2025. The verdict comes down. Karen Reed, not guilty of murder, not guilty of manslaughter, not guilty of leaving the scene, guilty only of the lesser DUI charge operating under the influence.
Yeah, just the OUI. She got 1 year probation, had to do the 24D alcohol education program, and the scene outside the courthouse. Apparently, cheers erupted.
A huge validation for the defense, then.
Absolutely. The verdict unequivocally validated their arguments about the investigation's flaws. It sent a clear message. When police work is questionable, juries will notice. It's a powerful statement about needing a vigilant defense to hold authorities accountable.
You know, this case really does offer some profound lessons. First, like you said, question everything. A good defense has to examine every piece of evidence, challenge anything that seems off.
No matter how small it seems. Second lesson. Police aren't always right. Law enforcement can make mistakes. And sometimes, yes, bias or personal connections can creep in and influence things. It's a hard truth, maybe, but essential for justice.
And lesson 3, documentation matters, especially now. The defense digging into phone records, texts, timelines, that digital trail was incredibly powerful.
Absolutely critical. And finally, maybe the most human lesson, stand your ground.
Karen Reed maintained her innocence through years of this. Her willingness to fight, that ultimately played a huge role. It really underscores the importance of due process, fighting for your rights, even when the odds seem stacked against you.
The public reaction was huge, wasn't it? So much support for Reed, so much skepticism towards the authorities. People felt it was a complete embarrassment for the state and officers, a massive failure for the prosecution. Yeah, the public narrative really shifted. And you have to remember the cost. This wasn't cheap. Estimates range from $900,000 total for both trials, maybe closer to $2 million. That's a lot of taxpayer money for a case that ended with so many questions about the investigation itself.
It definitely raises questions about managing public funds when things get so messy. So, speaking of what's next, Karen Reed is largely acquitted. What happens now? Sources suggest she might sue. Legal payback against the investigators.
It's definitely possible. She could sue the Commonwealth, the state police, arguing they didn't train officers properly, arguing false arrest under the Constitution. Claims like malicious prosecution or constitutional rights violations against individual officers are also on the table, especially considering the personal cost to her. She lost jobs, sold her house to pay, apparently, multi-million-dollar legal fees.
Wow, so another huge legal fight could be coming.
Potentially. And don't forget, she still faces a civil lawsuit from John O'Keefe's family. His brother, Paul, is the lead plaintiff. They're seeking monetary damages.
Right, and civil cases are different. Lower standard of proof.
Much lower. Not beyond a reasonable doubt like in criminal court. It's preponderance of the evidence, basically. Is it more likely than not? So the outcome there could be very different from the criminal trial.
Okay. And how have the authorities, like the state police, responded officially to the verdict and the public outcry?
Well, the Massachusetts State Police Colonel, Jeffrey Noble, put out a statement. He extended condolences to O'Keefe's family, importantly, and he committed the department to thoroughly review our actions, deliver advanced investigative training, ensure appropriate oversight, and enhance accountability. He said they will continue to improve.
An acknowledgement, at least.
Yes, it indicates they understand the impact this case had on public trust. And keep in mind, there's still ongoing federal interest. The FBI investigation into the Canton Police Department is apparently still open. Some people are even speculating the DOJ might get involved with RICO charges against, well, related to the handling of
That's organized crime stuff applied here.
It suggests allegations of potential systemic corruption or conspiracy in how the case was handled. That's the speculation anyway. It means the legal scrutiny might continue for a long time. More accountability could still be coming.
So, wrapping this up, if there's one central takeaway from this whole deep dive into the Karen Reed trial, it really stands as this compelling example of why a robust defense is so critical. Holding authorities accountable, especially when an investigation's integrity is seriously questioned.
It really reminds us, doesn't it? Even when things look incredibly bad and the whole weight of the state seems against you, a relentless pursuit of due process, of just questioning everything, can make all the difference. But it also leaves us with a big question, I think, for all of us. What does it actually take to rebuild public trust in institutions like law enforcement, like the justice system, once it's been shaken this badly?